Hi everybody, how are you today? I am so glad to be back. I had such a beautiful time with my daughter and son-in-law, and we have decided, I think, to move back to the area so that we can be near to them and to be near to our granddaughter. And we are super excited about this grandbaby. And so I would really covet right now. I covet your prayers for our move, selling the house, buying another home. My mother really wants to move back. She's 77 years old almost. She'll be 77 in September. She really wants to move back, and so I do pray that this goes well. It's going to be a difficult move, and I don't know when we'll be moving, but I'll definitely keep you posted. Today's video, though, this is really interesting. This is fascinating, and this is the reason why I'm a little bit late today, because I've spent so much time on this particular video. It was pretty deep, because I don't understand military stuff, and that's part of this. So if any of you military people out there, if I say something wrong, or, if I mess something up, let me know, please, because I'm not really very familiar with military terms. But the video is called, "Is This the Beast of Revelation?" Are we seeing the beast rearing its ugly head in the Middle East, right? Because I really think we might be. And remember, this is my perspective. So I could be wrong, but let me know what you think. Anyways, when it's over, let me know, because it's fascinating. I thought it was really interesting, but it is setting the stage for the Antichrist to plant his palatial tents exactly where the Bible says. Exactly. But anyway, today we're going to be looking at the prophets Daniel, and we're going to be looking at the book of Revelation. So John is included in that. And, they both kind of describe the rise of this final global kingdom, don't they? And what's interesting about this final global kingdom is it is vastly different than all of the previous kingdoms before, right? It is going to be, it says, a fragmented yet collective kingdom. But it's going to be transactional in nature, and it will be driven by a highly militarized network. And today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the current military and diplomatic architecture of the Middle East, and how it's created what appears to be the infrastructure for the final beast kingdom. So to understand how these pieces kind of fit together, we're going to have to look at the book of Daniel. Following Daniel's captivity in Babylon, Daniel prophesied about a final empire with 10 horns. And he explained that this would not be a typical kingdom, unlike the gold and the bronze kingdoms that he mentioned in Daniel chapter 2, or the animal-like empires of chapter 7. This fourth beast he described, it didn't have a likeness of an animal or anything earthly, okay? He described it, though, as being terrifying, dreadful, and exceedingly strong. It's a predatory beast with great iron teeth. And it will devour and break in pieces and stamp what remains with its feet. So as Daniel watched this frightening vision kind of unfold, an angel explained the meaning very plainly in Daniel 7, stating that the 10 horns arising out of this kingdom, they represent 10 kings, right? And Daniel then observed, as a boastful little horn, traditionally known as the Antichrist, will rise to power from this coalition, describing the horn as having a mouth speaking arrogant words. So this group of 10 kings will merge their forces to operate as a single weapon, as a single beast. That's really what he's describing. And it will kind of create this unified global beast empire. According to John, this empire will rule the final 3.5 years of the tribulation period, when he persecutes the saints and he implements the mark of the beast. So if you look at the Middle East right now, all right, you can actually see this beast rearing its ugly head. The United States is officially aligned with a network of 10 partners and allies in the Middle East right now. And they're all anchored together by a formal security agreement and shared regional objectives. This 10-nation coalition includes Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Turkey. So this multi-nation network, it actually dictates regional politics, and it forms a security shield in the Middle East against rivals. All right, and what makes this particular network so interesting to me is how it was legally and operationally created. Through the major non-NATO ally, it's called MNNA, legal framework. It was created by Congress, okay? And this was done quite some time ago. It's nothing new, but it's the combination of these things that you're going to see. So these nations, though, that are part of this MNNA, they gain priority access to American weapons and intelligence sharing. In addition to this, the creation of the Abraham Accords played a role by ending decades of diplomatic gridlock, uniting Israel with its Arab neighbors. So following the Accords, the U.S. military shifted Israel into U.S. CENTCOM, all right? And it created this single integrated regional air and missile defense grid out of enemies. You see? This Abraham Accords really put the lid on it, I'd say. So the question is to me, all right, are we witnessing the beast of Revelation in Daniel? So, and are we seeing the creation of this centralized transactional, or kind of sort of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, transactional, security alliance? Because that's really what it appears to be. The Bible did predict a day when 10 kings would fuse into a beast, right? Centuries after Daniel's Babylonian vision, the Apostle John was exiled on the island of Patmos, and God showed him the same kingdom. But this time, this kingdom for John was rising out of the sea. And it's kind of interesting when you think about rising out of the sea. In Revelation 13, 1-4, John describes the beast rising out of the sea when he has 10 horns, he has 7 heads, and 10 diadems on its horns, and blasphemous names on its head. And the beast that John saw was like a leopard, and its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion. And to it, the dragon, Satan himself, gave his power and his throne and great authority. So does this description fit? That's the question. Does it fit the alignment of these 10 nations that we see today? John tells us where the beast rises from the sea, right? And some believe that this sea represents the Gentile world, while others believe that the sea represents is more of a description of the world's upheaval during this time or chaos at this time. But, you know, in my opinion, I could see how both would kind of fit, because it is during the time of the tribulation that this alliance is created, right? And we know that during the tribulation that it is a turbulent time. But in any case, scripture does tell us that a 10-nation alliance doesn't form during a time of peace. It doesn't. It's birthed as a response to regional volatility and wars during the tribulation. So, and I would guess too that, you know, economic pressures are going to play a vital role in this situation, especially in regards to oil, right? Because oil always plays a really big part in almost everything, doesn't it? It controls the world. But when we examine the anatomy of the beast described by Daniel and John, possessing the body of a leopard, the feet of a bear, and the mouth of a lion, we're actually looking at the description of fusing military capabilities. And this is a big part of the beast, is his military capability. No single nation acts alone, do they? Not anymore. That's not the way we do things. Instead, you know, just as the Bible talks about, this 10-nation coalition has diverse traits, and it operates as a singular super weapon. That's really what it does. The alliance achieves the speed and agility of a leopard by running regional information fusion centers. And I didn't realize that there was something called an information fusion center. And what it does is it integrates human intelligence networks across Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. And this information center is part of the bear-like crushing power and global reach of the U.S. military. So this entire network is then directed by a centralized mouth, right? The power of the mouth. It commands the beast's members or body. That's what the mouth does. So in the Middle East, the lion's mouth is the headquarters of U.S. CENTCOM at an air base in Qatar. This combined air operations center works inside a massive digital bunker, which I didn't know any of this. It's very interesting. But it's acting as both the brain and the mouth of this alliance. So it's not just for planes, right? It is the communications hub that lets a commander in Qatar control operations across all 10 allied nations from Jordan to Saudi Arabia. Imagine that. So it takes all and it compiles it all, and then this guy over here can tell this part what to do and this part what to do. It's really interesting. But it is this level, though, of technological integration that causes the end times world to marvel and cry out in Revelation 13. Who is like the beast? Who can make war with the beast? It would have to be something really significant. And, you know, when you really think about this question, who can fight against it, right? The world is actually standing in awe when they say this, because this beast seems to be invincible and it frightens world powers. So the U.S. has the potential to project this kind of power, not only, you know, offensively, but defensively. They have built this grid with Patriot missile batteries and THAAD systems deployed across the Gulf to neutralize threats while maintaining air supremacy. At the same time, the U.S. Fifth Fleet naval operations in Bahrain commands multiple carrier strike groups, including aircraft carriers, guided missile destroyers, and nuclear-powered submarines to secure global chokeholds like the Strait of Hormuz, remember? And when John saw the leopard, the bear, and the roaring mouth of the lion, he was seeing what looks to me this exact infrastructure controlling the ground, the water, and the skies over the Euphrates River today. That's what it looks like to me. This is a beast. So now consider the dramatic shifts occurring on the geopolitical stage, right? In a report I read in the Jerusalem Post, I found this fascinating, that they're actually talking about moving U.S. CENTCOM to where? The Negev Desert in Israel. I thought that was interesting. So imagine relocating vital military bases from Gulf states directly over there to the Negev Desert. And then in the Wall Street Journal, there was a report that CENTCOM is considering moving its military bases, operational systems in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia directly to Israel. So, and the whole, so it was confirmed. It's not just one news article. There's two here. But what's interesting about it, it was stated the reason why they're considering moving CENTCOM to Israel is because they want to distance themselves further from Iranian missile and drone attacks. So from a prophetic perspective, this development I thought was very interesting because I don't believe that this move is merely about evading enemy fire. I believe it is to consolidate the beast's infrastructure and position him directly inside Israel. And we all know that they want their hands on Gaza, right? And they want their hands on whatever they can get. But by moving the operational systems of our military away from Gulf states and locking them directly into Israel, the pieces are being perfectly arranged for the enforcement of possibly another security covenant. And, you know, if it wasn't already done, which some believe, you know, that the Abraham Accords were exactly that. So, but for me, it definitely is a literal setup for the final military campaign that's recorded in Daniel chapter 11. So the prophet Daniel was given a specific map for the end times landscape. In Daniel 11:40, we're told that the time of the end, regional powers would push against the Antichrist. The response would be a swift and overwhelming military power that will overflow and pass through the nations, right? The text details the footsteps of the Antichrist, starting in verse 41, that he will enter also into this, into Israel, that he will stretch his greedy hand over the region, right? And take control of Egypt's gold and silver. So geographically, where is Egypt? It is right next to the Negev Desert. Isn't that interesting? So, you know, for centuries, Bible scholars, they have wondered how a global ruler's military would ever get in Israel, right? But today, it seems like these headlines kind of give us possibly the answer. How does he get there? So under the guise of protecting assets from regional threats, the most advanced warfare, satellite reconnaissance, and command networks are being routed into the Holy Land. His palatial tents, the central command structures of the global beast, are being planted in the very soil the prophets predicted. The relocation of American military systems onto Israeli soil is made possible by the creation of the Abraham Accords. That's what did it, right? So this is fascinating. But when the Accords were signed, the world celebrated as a diplomatic triumph, right? They thought it was great. Remember the big ceremony, all these things that went on. But through the lens of prophecy, right, it paints a very, very different picture. It creates the framework for one mind by transitioning decades of informal security meetings into a formal, legally binding alliance driven by one shared threat, Iran. That's why they did it, right? So it is this specific peace deal that broke historical regional barriers and bound defense and espionage cooperation while building shared digital command centers that now allow the U.S. military to pick up its operational systems from Gulf states and put them exactly right inside the borders of Israel. And by creating a unified air defense grid where Arab and Israeli networks communicate as a single entity, the Abraham Accords paved the legal and technological roads needed for the Antichrist palatial tents to be planted securely within Israel. So this is not just happening through diplomacy, it's being embedded into our laws. Congress passed legislation, and this is very recent, most of you have heard about it, like the United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. This law actually mandates data fusion and network integration across the defense spectrum, meaning that we have fused digital technology in every single way a modern war is fought. It sets up a permanent executive agent that bypasses politics. So it ensures no matter who is elected, the digital brains of our war machine remain permanently locked together, right? There's no separation anymore. It is one beast. And this law extends this tech grid to regional partners like Jordan. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's the first thing I thought, because Daniel talked about it as iron and clay, nations that do not mix, they do not hold together. Why else would nations unite? Think about that. It's always transactional, isn't it? And especially with him, it's very transactional. They trade what they have to survive a common threat. That's the idea here. And they have already created an information fusion center and built a unified air defense grid, and they are learning now how to operate as a single intelligence entity, meaning that the Antichrist, he doesn't need to spend decades building the beast system, inventing the military grid, creating surveillance networks, or convincing Middle Eastern nations to share intelligence. The technology is already there. The bases are built. The treaties are signed. It's all in place. The conditions for this final kingdom are absolutely here, guys. That's what I think. But, and who did all these things? That's the other thing. Who did all of this, right? It was Donald Trump. He engineered and signed the Abraham Accords in 2020, undermining traditional diplomacy to build a highly transactional peace network centered on trade, real estate, and weapon sales rather than human rights. He doesn't care about human rights. So in the final days of his first term, it was Trump who ordered the historic military shift of Israel into CENTCOM. Following his return to power, Trump finalized the 10-nation alignment by executing an executive action that designated Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, binding the final regional superpower into his web in exchange for unprecedented trillion-dollar investment pledges. No kidding. By pushing aggressively for an expanded Abraham Accords coalition that demands absolute submission from regional actors like Iran and Qatar and Turkey, Trump demands that the entire network give its power to a singular vision. Rather than resisting a global beast empire, Trump is actively forging it with his own hands, using American military power to construct a 10-horn Middle Eastern war machine that he is positioned to inherit, control, and command from an area between Jerusalem and the sea. This is so crazy, right? So crazy. So it's exciting though, right? But as we see this final beast kingdom rise, the Church of Jesus Christ should never fear, right? Daniel 2 tells us that after the feet of iron and clay are formed, in the days of these kings, a stone, Jesus Christ, will break in pieces the kingdoms of this world. The closing of human government means the opening of the eastern skies is drawing near. Yet, even as this unparalleled military machine consolidates its grasp, God draws a hard line in the sand. The scripture closes this military report with a declaration of God's divine sovereignty. Yet he shall come to his end, and none will help him. So no matter how integrated the beast's data is, no matter how automated his missile defenses are, and no matter how invincible the network appears, human tyranny collapses instantly, right? When confronted by the true King of Kings. And that is true. So we have that to look forward to, guys. That is the best thing. So, let's cheer. Let's cheer on all of this, because hopefully, before long, we can go home. That's my goal. I cannot wait. So this world, it exhausts me. But anyways, thank you for listening, and thank you for subscribing, and thank you for all of your comments. I really do enjoy talking to all of you. It's wonderful to come together and to be part of the body together, isn't it? And I will see you next week. And, I do pray that you're safe, and I pray that you are blessed and that you have joy unspeakable. Okay, so I'll see you next week. Bye.